Please rise to salute the flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. All right. Roll call. Brian?
Present.
Joe?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Wilson?
Present.
Bernardo?
Here.
Amelia is not present tonight, and Nicholas Rudolph is present. Next up is the review and approval of the meeting minutes from last time. Any additions, changes?
Make a motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. So first up is a request for a certificate of compliance, 3 Agganis Avenue, DEP file number 0610790. The applicant is the Cavallo Corporation. I know Rick couldn't be here, but Tom, you were able to walk this down, and if you wouldn't mind speaking briefly, letting the other commissioners know how things went.
Yeah, Joe and I both walked it. It's built per plans. The as-built seem accurate. Ground is stabilized. Looks good.
Okay, thank you. If you wouldn't mind.
Yes, my name is Maurice Lepage, 78 Mill Street, Middleton, Mass. I'm here for 3 Agnes. We had a site visit, and the project consists of a single-family home, house on pilots. And I'd be happy to answer any questions,
I don't have any questions at this time. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions regarding the project or the completion of this project? Nope. Thank you. Seeing no questions, I would call for a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of compliance.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mario. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, next up is a notice of intent, 195 American Legion Highway. This is a demolition on-site and construction of a 6-story storage facility. The DEP file is not available. The applicant is Ed Doherty. How you doing? If you could turn on the mic, state your name.
Matthew Costa with Beals Associates on behalf of the applicant, Chems Development Corp., and Ed Doherty. I do have a presentation I'd like to just plug in and set up if
Sure.
it's not already
We
set up.
have cord here, if you want to get that. And you can bring it over to your laptop. Did the same thing.
All right, again, Matthew Costa. With me today also is Larry Beals from our office and Molly McGillicuddy and Vin Conti of the owner of the property. Just as an update, I checked this morning, there is a DEP file number listed, 0610849. And the only comment that was listed was that the revenue was pending the acceptance of the fee. We did check with our banking, and it says as the fee has cleared, but I'm sure it's just something that's going on through DEP's process. But we'll check on that later. What I'd like to talk to you about, just set up a kind of a brief agenda. So I'll just go through the summary of the permitting of the overall project, go through the existing conditions of the property, historic images of the site throughout the years, and then obviously the proposed development site plan, the grading and the stormwater, erosion, control measures, utility plan, and then we also have some building renderings so you can see what that final product would look like. And then obviously ending with compliance with the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act. All right, so obviously we're here for the notice of intent and seeking an order of conditions. We'd filed that a couple weeks ago. There was an order of resource area delineation, an ORAD, that was issued in 2023, back when we first began this project. With the years and the state extension on that, that doesn't expire until 2028 of August. We are also going before the city council. The city council did issue a special permit for the land use as a warehouse or a self-storage facility. That was issued in late of 2023 for the original development. Since then, a new developer has taken over, so that's why we haven't kind of been around since those few years. Since then, we're also now filing again with the city council for a special permit for increased height. Previously, we had plans for a 5-story building at about 60 feet. We're now seeking 70 feet and 6 stories. We're also going before the Board of Appeals for a variance for floor area ratio. As you can tell, and shortly, it's a very small lot. So we are, doing a number of stories in order to make the market work for what we're trying to do here. We did receive variances for the original 5-story development for minimum parking, the maximum floor area ratio, and a minimum lot area. We did receive those variances in 2023, late of 2023, and then we extended those variances late last year. Other permits that we're seeking, we are going for site plan review commission. We did file that earlier this week, and we'll be meeting with city staff next Tuesday morning. We're pending a preliminary meeting with Mass DOT to confirm that a permit's required, but we are expecting a vehicle access permit as American Legion Highway is a state-owned road. Then obviously we'll have the EPA construction general permit due to the over an acre of disturbance on the site. So property is located obviously on American Legion Highway. It's just off and kind of behind the big Amazon facility, the prior NECO facility. Revere Street just above the property, and then Broadway over towards the left there. All developed area around the site with the exception of the wetland resource areas that abut to the back. So here's a blow up of that, an aerial from June of 2024. The bordering vegetated wetlands are highlighted in red there. The large Amazon facility just behind our property. And then Rumney Marsh Academy is directly across the street from our property. This is the gas station, and then there's a Millennium Auto Parts that does detailing for vehicles, and there's also a garage that services vehicles on the property. The site is located inside the FEMA floodplain, which is the area highlighted in blue, so the entire property is located within that floodplain. This is a coastal flood zone, just because the floodplain extends all the way from the ocean across. There is an elevation set to zone AE, so the elevation of the flood is 11 on our site. Just some site photos. Top left is as you're coming down American Legion Highway. Amazon would be kind of right behind you, the entrance just behind you on the right, and you're looking into the site. Currently, the property is operated as the fueling station, and the backside of that is also used as kind of a contractor's yard. U-Haul stores some vehicles, and then it's just a mix of different contractors who leave equipment, park their vehicles before going out the next day. So you can see some of those vehicles, materials, stockpiles. A lot of those are just around the edge of the overall development and kind of right along that wetland resource boundary that I'll show you in a second. Then obviously the fueling station, there's a few parking spaces up towards the front of the site. So the ORAD plan, which was obviously done in 2023, the wetland resource area is the black line highlighted by the green, and then that 100-foot buffer zone that extends onto the property is that light shade of green there. And then as I mentioned, the FEMA floodplain takes the entire property, so everywhere inside that blue line in the bottom left-hand corner is the boundary of FEMA there. So I'll do my best to highlight on the screen here, but generally the existing disturbance, which is paved roads up towards, or pavement up towards the front around the fueling station, around the buildings, that's all paved. And then out towards the back, there's about turn the laser pointer on here. Once you get past just about this line is where the contractor's yard kind of begins. It's fenced in. gated. All that area is compacted gravel. Relatively poor condition. There's some ponding that goes on. As I mentioned, the stockpiles that all around the property. Some of them slightly extend over the property line. But that wetland resource area is, Phragmites are throughout the whole thing. So it's a pretty hard line around that back side of the property. And then over on the left, it's vegetated before it gets off to the back side there. So historic images, just in 1938, site wasn't developed at all. This was all marsh wetlands associated with kind of the Atlantic and everything that had come over. American Legion Highway, you can see just on the left side there. 1971, the site was starting to get developed. You can see the gas station has been in, the auto repair facility, and then even the kind of fence or back portion of the property there. They're starting to get development to push into the back a little bit farther there as well. That's 71. Up once you get into about 86, the large Necco building, I believe it was Necco at the time, was added in there, and then the site just kind of kept growing to the full extent of the overall property line by about that time. Still the gas station, still Vinzauto and the contractor kind of lay down area out towards the back. 1995, similar condition, wetlands in the back, everything's still developed out towards the front, and then obviously that Necco building is still there. 2001, similar condition. I will point out that although it is a wetland resource area in the back, it's actually mowed, I think by kind of some mowers on floating wheels, but it is actively kind of disturbed and cleared every once in a while. And you can see it again kind of up towards the top right of that. But June 2024, most recent aerial that we could get, still the same kind of general condition where everything's developed all the way out to that property line. So existing conditions on the site, everything is kind of topography-wise is sloping from American Legion out towards the back. American Legion Highway is about elevation 9 and 10. As I mentioned, flood zone is elevation 11, which puts that whole property inside the flood zone. And then right out towards the back rear of that property line where all those blue arrows are pointing, that's about elevation 6. That drainage channel and the wetlands around elevation 1 out towards the back of the property, it's a little bit higher on the boundary on the left side of the screen there. As I mentioned, the front area is paved, the rest is compacted gravel. No real significant landscaping, especially on the property. There's some scrub trees that are just between the pavement and the gravel in the back. And then there's some trees mostly out towards outside of the property line on the left, and then just your typical wetland plantings to the direct back of the site and the right side of the site there. There is no formal stormwater management system on the property. Everything just kind of sheet flows off the back of the property, and that includes the fueling area out towards the front. There are some drains that are inside of the building, but there are no catch basins. There's no water quality systems, no infiltration. This site, as I mentioned, was developed well before those regulations were in place. So everything kind of sheet flows off to the back and directly into those wetland resource areas, including anything that's dripping off the trucks in the back, anything that's stockpiled in the back. So existing soils on the site, there was a subsurface investigation done by Whitestone Associates back in 2022. That's included in your stormwater management report. That was included with the application. 4 borings, 3 test pits were conducted. Generally, it obviously from the historic aerials, everything was historically filled over the wetlands. So those borings and test pits consisted of a loose to medium dense silty sand with gravel, poorly graded sand, demolition debris, organics, and blast rock. That was that fill that was brought in over the wetlands. Underneath that is underlain by an organic layer consisting of black fibrous peat. That's depths to 11 and 20, and that's important as I get into the proposed foundation of the building. Underneath that organic peat is the marine clay layer that depths to about 50 feet. And then refusal about 76 to 84, depending on where it is, at likely a glacial till is what the geotech had identified it as. Estimated seasonal high groundwater, they had mentioned it at or near the ground surface, which makes sense for the elevation of the wetlands, especially towards the back. They noted water about 5 feet down and some of the borings up towards the front, but for the most part, everything's expected to be at or near the ground surface and fluctuates with seasonal high flooding and you know, different natural conditions. A little bit more into the soil. So there was some environmental testing done. There's a phase 1 environmental site assessment done by Rue Associates in 2017. It noted a number of historic and recorded conditions on the site, most of those being some leaking oil from hydraulic lifts inside the building, as well as some releases of gasoline during fill or replacement of some of the tanks. All of those listed on the right side of that screen have been closed out. And then obviously there's a historic ones which just generally say that there were releases, but those were closed out as well, some of those even the same day. They did identify what's called a business environmental risk. That's the possible historic filling, which is that unknown condition of the fill material since it was brought in prior to 1950s and the overall regulations that controlled that. So with those documented conditions out there, they needed to do a phase 2 limited subsurface assessment. That's underway still, but we did get some responses back on those conditions. Those found concentrations exceeding reportable concentrations, which included heavy metals, lead, chromium, zinc, some semi-volatile organic compounds. I'll skip those words there, but you know, some things in the ground that really shouldn't be there. So the site is not appropriate for use as a residence, playground, or any type of recreational facility. It'll likely go under an AUL once that phasing process is complete and all that work is done with Mass DEP through the proper documentation. So that'll play into, as I described, the drainage system on the site, and that we're not infiltrating any stormwater because we don't want to really move around any of that material, and that everything that we're going to bring into the site to bring the building up above the floodplain, that's all going to be clean fill material and is generally going to cap that historic fill, contaminated fill in place. So the proposed development, the good stuff here. So proposed site plan, the building is 24,295 square foot footprint. Right now we're doing it at the 6 stories. One of the items I did want to kind of bring up here is that we are proposing it and it's included in your plan set as 6 stories. If we are unable to get that special permit or variance, we would hope that the commission would allow us to still maintain approval if we are still granted one to construct the development at 5 stories. But for right now, we're continuing with the 6-story development just so everything between every department is consistent. Overall, the building will be about 135,000 gross square feet across those 6 stories. It has 13 parking spaces / loading spaces. Some of those are inside the building, or there's an interior drive-through that I kind of highlight right through the middle there. And then there's a few spaces up towards the front, and then we've put a number of spaces around the perimeter of the site, of the building, because there'll be kind of roll-up garage-style units around that back perimeter where you can see that light gray. That's a concrete apron that surrounds that. So it's a 24-foot wide bituminous access drive around the whole building, 9-foot wide concrete parking / loading apron directly next to the building. Overall, the development's going to be a reduction in impervious area. That's about 18,000 square feet, about 26% reduction in impervious area across the property. And we're going to increase open space by about 18,000 square feet. So all that green area that you can see, that's all going to be conservation wildlife mix and number of plantings. There'll be a dense evergreen screen along American Legion Highway. That was one of the things that was identified during our prior city council work. And then the back side of the site where you can see that light gray, pink line being the property line, that's going to be a riprap slope, a boulder slope. Since we are in the coastal flood zone and subject to wave action, believe it or not, we've provided these large boulders to kind of absorb that. That's a 2-to-1 slope. So not only does it allow us to meet existing grade, that riprap will provide some protection to that slope as well. So the building will be pile supported. As I mentioned, there's a layer of organic matter, then you have marine clay, so your typical spread footing foundation isn't going to work on a property like this. So there'll be those increased costs to drive piles all the way down to that glacial till and refusal layer by 70, 80 feet below existing grade there. I mentioned the dense evergreen screed, proposed plantings, about 16 total trees, 28 shrubs, and that conservation and wildlife mix around the site. We're also proposing a chain link fence around the entire property. or at least the property, the front kind of side that I'm highlighting here. There'll be gates at either entry for security purposes. There'll be a nice architectural metal fence along the frontage, but then it'll transition to a chain link fence around the back. We've changed that to a chain link fence to help prevent any wind-blown trash and debris from entering off into the wetlands. Currently, there is a decent amount of trash and debris that's kind of flown off the site, the abutting parcels and American Legion Highway. Get into that shortly, but we have committed through the city council and will commit with the commission that we will do trash cleanup around our property and into those wetlands to really, be a good neighbor and clean those resource areas up. We are also proposing no snow dumping signage and have provided a snow storage plan on our operation and maintenance manual. So that no snow dumping signage will be provided around the kind of rear perimeter of the site, especially where it drops off directly to those resource areas. We don't want anyone dumping any snow that's filled with, oil or heavy volumes of salt into those wetlands. So no snow dumping signs are placed about 30 or so feet on center, so it'll provide a good sign for anyone driving around there. Wall pack lighting, we've done around the perimeter of the building since it's just about that 24 and 9 foot wide. Those wall packs will provide enough light to shine on the roadway and access into the building, but none of that light will spill over the property line or into those wetland resource areas. And I mentioned we are proposing to remove that trash and debris on site and the abutting parcels. Proposed grading and stormwater improvement. As I mentioned, the clean fill is being imported to raise the building above the FEMA elevation. With existing American Legion Highway about elevation 10 at a proposed curb cut, we are proposing at a finished floor elevation of 12. So that ends up being about 6 or 7 feet of fill around the back side of the site and a few feet as you move, up towards the front. All that's going to be clean imported fill, structural fill to support the building as well as the pavement, especially with that layer of peat well below grade that there's concern about that settling as well. As I mentioned, there's that riprap boulder slope around the whole back side of the property, 26% reduction in impervious surface. And then for the stormwater management system, we are going to be doing obviously a much improved water quality system. We're going to have about 85% TSS removal through the use of hydrodynamic separators from the catch basins. So catch basins will capture the water, deep sump-hooded catch basins, and then that flows into a water quality unit before it flows into a detention system on the site to retain that water and release it at the same rate and volumes that are existing today. As I mentioned, we're not proposing any infiltration on the site as there is contaminants in those existing grades below. Erosion and sedimentation control, your typical measures, obviously silt fence, silt sock around the perimeter of the site, highlighted in yellow on the plan. Inlet protection on all of our catch basins. We've identified temporary stockpile areas and material stockpile areas for equipment up towards the front of the site outside of that 100-foot buffer. And then we've also done temporary sediment basins out towards the back of the site that can be utilized during construction and during those fills to make sure that none of that water prior to stabilization is running off and getting out into the wetlands. So that basin will have a level spread, or I'm sorry, we'll have a perforated riser wrapped in stone. We'll pull out some of that sediment before it discharges to a riprap spillway and level spreader to slowly release that clean water back off site. Concrete washouts obviously provided as well, just to make sure that that's not being dumped into the ground or anywhere off site. We will have daily site inspections conducted by the contractor. That's in addition to the SWIP inspections and reporting that will go along with the EPA construction general permit. We do have an elaborate erosion control notes that are included in our project plan set that includes everything winter conditions to overall erosion control sequencing throughout construction and post-construction, and obviously an elaborate operation and maintenance plan to support the development as well. Proposed utility plan, your typical utility services. The building does have services to it right now, so we will be having a sanitary sewer connection. We are going to move an existing sewer manhole that runs through an existing sewer easement that's in the back of the property. We're going to move that manhole to provide better access to the city for cleaning and inspections. And then we'll connect into that. There'll be a oil water separator due to the drive-through location within the building that'll remove any of those oils prior to getting into the sanitary sewer system. And then your typical electric telecom connections to an overhead riser with a transformer, and then a gas service connection to a main that's out in American Legion Highway. This is a proposed rendering of the building. Disregard the name, it's being noted as climate control self-storage. That's just in response to our prior building that was named American Legion Self-Storage, which the city council had asked us to do a little something different. Once there's a known tenant and the building goes up, we'll come up with something different. But what we've done and why I'm showing this is it's a very nice architectural look at. Jordan Architects, the development's architect, has spent a lot of time on this. They've looked at the abutting parcels, including the Rumney Marsh Academy across the street, to kind of mimic some of that design feature. So you'll have this kind of eyebrow lift over the front with a large amount of windows to kind of break up that building. And then just, obviously with what you guys are looking to approve here, I've put in the 8 interests of the Wetlands Protection Act and what we've done to comply with those. Number one, the protection of public and private water supplies. We have no negative impact on that at all. The overall development and redevelopment will act as a significant improvement to the protection of that water supply through our stormwater BMPs, the overall system, where there is not one in place right now that meets all standards, and then a complete erosion and sedimentation control plan, long-term operation and maintenance plan, and then obviously that EPA permit throughout construction. Groundwater supply, same components. The water quality in the stormwater system will be an overall significant improvement upon existing conditions right now. The decrease in impervious area and the added vegetation will also help to support that groundwater supply and provide clean water back into that. Flood control, we're not increase any rate of volume of runoff from the property. There is no reduction in flood storage capacity, although we are inside the flood zone. This is a coastal flood zone, so you can't mitigate against the ocean. So there is no compensatory flood storage required for any coastal flood zones. And then these are pretty quick here. Storm damage prevention, obviously that stormwater management system will help to alleviate that. And then the operation and maintenance plan and sedimentation control during construction and then after construction will prevent against any of that. Prevention of pollution, EPA construction general permits, SWIP inspections throughout. And then as I mentioned, that fence around the property and the snow storage plans and signs that will prevent any windblown trash or anything dumped off into the wetlands. Land containing shellfish and protection of fisheries not applicable on this site, and wildlife habitat. There is no certified vernal pools within 100 feet. It was redone through the ORAD process, confirmed, and there is no natural heritage or estimated priority habitat, rare and endangered species in or around the property. That is all I have for you tonight, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. One of the questions I had, you said you were going to be raising the grade, and I'd just be curious, how much, I don't know why I missed that, or if it wasn't said, but how much are you raising it?
It'll be about 7 feet in the back of the property, about 1 or 2 feet up towards American Legion Highway. I think overall earthwork is about 8,000 cubic yards of fill that's brought in, and that's taking away the selects of your gravels, your pavements, the void space from the detention system.
And that will be the reason that you would have that riprap back there, to have that natural grading to come up to the fill that you're putting in?
Correct. We could do it with a 2-to-1 vegetated slope, but with the coastal flood zone and the potential for wave action there, those large boulders, I think their minimum stone size is about 100 pounds, so there's some pretty beefy boulders that'll help to stabilize that against anything.
Getting you out of the floodplain certainly helps too.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, of course.
Yep. Anyways, any other commissioners have some questions?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
if I may, a couple of things. Would the change in elevation, floors from 5 to 6, affect any of the pilings or the foundation?
They'll still need to go down as deep as they're going. I don't know for certain if they'll change the size of them at all. My guess is not. So there'll still need to be piles all the way down to bedrock or that glacial till.
But the design will be the same?
Yes, generally it'd be the same, yep.
Another question, this is just look, something caught my eye. I thought I saw something about a gasoline spill, but I think it said a date of 2009, 2990. It should have been 1990, I assume?
Yes. There should be a
Was that
typo.
gasoline or oil?
Yeah, probably gasoline. I think Vin's confirming behind me, but I believe that, yeah, that'd be gasoline. Most of everything that happened was small gasoline leaks during maintenance or the replacement of the tanks. So yes, I would say gasoline to that comment.
And my last question, so I'm going to call what's back there a creek, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you intend to clean all the way up and into that area, because there is debris in there, there's demolition material and stuff, I think. And then after that, well, you're going to have a fence,
Correct.
and it's no longer your responsibility to clean back there. Will there be access for the city openings in that back fence if they so need to go back there?
Not in the back fence. The slope off of our curb line will be too steep to really put any equipment down. It's a 2-to-1 slope, 3-to-1, so you could kind of walk down it, but there will be a path up towards the front of the site that you can get around that fence, just prior to that gate that the city can get down there with. I expect during our site plan review process, they'll look into that as well.
It looks like there's an area on the south side of the property where it starts curving, where there's no riprap, unless I'm mistaken from the drawing. I'm looking at the
This side over here?
Yeah, all the way in that corner,
Yeah,
somewhere.
once you get past our slope, it's pretty much flat down there, and that's inside of that 10-foot sewer easement that the city has rights to. So they should be able to navigate through that easement to get out towards the back if they need.
Thank you.
But yes, we are committed to removing all that trash and debris all the way out to that drainage channel or creek.
So just to kind of piggyback off of what you're saying about removing all the trash and debris, obviously the property, just based upon even your slide of how polluted it is, that it's not fit for human beings to live on the property, how much work will be actually done in excavating some of the dirt or top layers that are clearly the most polluted? Is that something that's going to take priority of removing that fill and replacing that with something else, or are you removing a lot of it? I'm just trying to get an idea of, just because it's a polluted pit of a piece of property. It's not hurting anyone's feelings here saying that for anyone who's driven by there over the last 20 years. I'm just kind of getting an idea of what you plan on doing for that once the building and everything's taken down.
Sure. So that's going to be identified as you move through that phase 2 environmental process and DEP's cleanup conditions and all of that. I think what we would expect is that for the most part, all the material will stay out on site. So existing pavement, the gravel will just be kind of mixed up, compacted, and then capped in place. Any export of any of that, dirty fill material would be a different level of permitting and additional costs to do that. So typically with something of this nature, they'll just leave that in place and cap it.
And then just kind of follow up on what he was asking before, Commissioner Lavelle, was about, you're going to put up the fence, which is great, obviously, but I'm thinking not about how it looks day one. I'm thinking about it looks, year 5 with Doritos bags pressed up against it from the wind and everything. Is there anything that you have in place for cleaning that area around it? Because I'm worried in 5 years or 10 years, that area is going to look as disgusting as it does today, will look like that later on. I mean, it's going to look beautiful when you're done, day one, but I'm thinking about long-term vision of that area.
Yes, the long-term operation and maintenance plan has a schedule for trash cleanup. So, that'll be on record and will be enforced. So I think that would be the requirement that makes somebody go out there, not only clean the trash against the fence, but anywhere else on the property.
And do you have a national brand that will be running it, or is it still up in the air?
It's still up in the air.
Okay. And one last question, sorry, do you know, let's just say everything gets approved, do you know how long of a process it'll be for building the actual land, when it would be constructed?
It'd be relatively soon. As soon as they get approvals, they'd be looking to get construction started as soon as possible. I think currently, assuming that we can get everything wrapped up before the end of this year, they'll be into construction next year.
Would that shut down part of American Legion Highway, or would that all be done on-site without having to shut down any of the 2 lanes?
To my knowledge, I don't think anything will have to be shut down. There's very light work that happens actually within the roadway, other than just tying in the curbs and installing a new curb where we're closing off an existing curb cut. So
Right.
I don't think there would be any significant impacts to American Legion Highway.
Thank you.
A couple from me. You said you're not changing the volume of storage on site for coastal flooding.
Yes.
How is that possible if you're raising that site 7 feet?
So with a coastal storm floodplain, you can't mitigate against, what's the best way to say this? Really, the Wetlands Protection Act doesn't require any compensatory flood storage for impacts inside of a coastal flood zone. It's basically that it's the ocean, so you can't really mitigate against the overall, ocean coming in. If I fill up this area, it's not going to have an overall impact on the flood storage because it's such a massive volume of water that would be impacting the property. And somebody well done on in a different state could do the same thing, and it just with an ocean, it's just a different kind of ball game, I guess.
So I think unluckily for you, the next people on the agenda have got me deep into research on compensatory storage. So I tend to disagree with you based on their application. What about the riverfront?
Not a riverfront. That's just been classified as a drainage channel. That's a constructed drainage channel that was reviewed through that ORAD process a few years ago. So it's just bordering vegetated wetlands, so no riverfront on the property.
Okay. But yeah, I think I would need more about the raising the site 7 feet and not decreasing the amount of volume you can store on site. I disagree.
Okay. I can get some more documentation to support that, if you'd like.
Because it's not just, so Amazon has to deal with that flooding? If you're raising your site 7 feet, or the neighborhood next door?
It wouldn't change that flood boundary.
Okay.
I just have a question about wildlife is impacted by the reflected glass. They cannot perceive glass as you and we can do, and that contributes to bird mortality. I saw in the picture that reflected glass. Is there anything we can do about it? That's something a concern for me.
Like putting a treatment on it so that they can see it a little better?
Yeah, so they one of the big contributors of the wildlife decrease around the world is the amount of glass that is reflective. They don't perceive as we do.
Sure.
So that's something that is kind of concern.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can speak with our architects about seeing any other options on that. It is just glass along the front American Legion Highway side where it's all developed area, very minimal trees where the school is. Around the whole back and the rear, the sides of the property, there is no big glass facades there. So
Yeah.
I do understand.
Yeah,
your
it's very
concern.
open space and a lot of trees where they can create, so it can be a impact on the wildlife. So that's something I would like to see if that can be changed, or on the other conditions that part can be. I don't know how much we can do, but that's something I would like you to consider that will be impacted.
Okay.
Any other questions?
One quick one, just for the record, there's no underground oil or gas tanks that had to be removed. Nobody ever mentioned that. Assuming that there was a gas station, et cetera, that's all been cleared out?
No, the gas station's still operating right now. Those tanks will be removed, all the proper processes performed once that happens. I think the current deal is Vin Conti still owns the property. If pending all approvals necessary, then the whole site would be demolished and redeveloped, and ownership may change hands at that time. But everything on site would be demolished, cleaned up. The tanks would all be removed, filled back in with clean fill. So all that would happen.
I have another question to follow that up. Is any of the property under MCP compliance? Do they have to meet any of that? Do they have test wells that they have to test every 5 years? Is any of the property under that?
I'm not 100% sure. Let me get back to you on that one. I do know there are monitoring wells on the property. They were put in for some of those prior releases that were eventually closed out. So I don't know exactly if anything's still, I don't believe anything's still open on the site, but there are wells that are still out there.
Okay. Seeing as how you're still seeking a variance with the building commission with this, and we still have some questions about compensatory storage, raising the grade of the site, the treatment to the windows for the birds. If you'd be willing, I'd like to continue this until September, and then we can get a really good handle on everything that's happening. It's definitely a little bit, especially where you are and where you're constructing this, a little intricate, and I'd like to make sure that we have enough time to take all things into consideration, please.
Sure. That would be acceptable to us.
Excellent. So we'll continue this till September, and hopefully we can get some questions answered about the site raising and a few others. But thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you all for your time.
All right. Next up, last but not least, notice of intents for 190 VFW Parkway, DEP file number 0610846, construction of the Revere High School. Applicant is the City of Revere.
While Claire is setting up here, I'm just going to quickly introduce myself. Brian Dakin, 1 High Street. I work with Left Field. We are the owner's project manager for the high school project. And wanted to thank you in advance for your time and your time last month. We wanted to focus tonight on some of the main components of the Wetlands Protection Act, namely in terms of handling of stormwater and floodwater. We'd like to run through a bit of a presentation, and then if there's any detailed questions on those matters or matters outside of that, I can get back up and we can sort of MC. We've got a lot of the team here with us, depending on what questions we have. So in the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to Claire from LEC and ultimately Niche, civil engineer on the project. Thanks.
All right. For the record, Claire Hogebohm, wetland scientist with LEC Environmental Consultants. We're representing the applicant, the City of Revere, for the Notice of Intent application. Before I jump into a recorded video that Chanel Jackson, professional engineer from Niche, prepared, I did just want to sort of bring the commission members back up to speed on sort of the history of our project team being before the commission and what sort of got us here to this meeting today. So about 1.5 years ago, February 2024, LEC submitted an ANRAD application with the Conservation Commission requesting the confirmation of wetland resource area boundaries throughout the property, including a confirmation of sort of the breakdown of the 100-year floodplain within our site, with bordering land subject to flooding reaching up to elevation 4.55 and land subject to coastal storm flowage reaching between 4.56 and elevation 11 or 12, depending where you are on the site. That was peer-reviewed by another professional wetland scientist, and an ORAD was issued by the Conservation Commission June of 2024. Now, with those confirmed wetland boundaries, the project team shortly thereafter came to the Commission in August of 2024 to informally present the proposed project and gain some feedback on the project, and notably on all of the mitigation that the project team was incorporating into the design with respect to how it could offset the proposed filling of the isolated wetland within the dog racetrack. And that is only locally jurisdictional under your ordinance. So that is why we were coming to the commission at that time, in addition to introducing the project at that point, to gain that feedback and guide us into further refining that design. Following that, in January of this year, the project team submitted Phase 1 notice of intent to request the order of conditions to demolish existing foundations and pavement at the project site in preparation for the notice of intent that's before the commission today. That order of conditions was issued in March of 2025, and the notice of intent before the commission was submitted on May 21st with us presenting the meeting and opening at the June 10th meeting the July 10th meeting last month. At that meeting, we went through a very robust discussion and presentation, and understandably, the commission requested more time to digest it. We requested a continuance, and since then have been going through some specific questions with commission members, trying to refine our presentation tonight to accurately address a lot of the concerns and questions that have been coming into our emails. So with that, Chanel Jackson, like I said earlier, professional engineer with Niche, initially didn't expect to be here tonight, so she prepared a recorded presentation to present this evening. But of course, she did make it tonight. She felt it was important to come, and she very kindly cut a vacation short to be here to answer any questions for the commission members after this presentation. So with that, I'm just going to hit play. This is about 20 minutes start to finish, and we just felt, even with her here tonight, it's a very concise presentation, and we just felt like it was a good one to share with everybody. So with that, I will press play. And
hello everyone, my name is Chanel Jackson. I'm a PE and a senior water resources engineer at Niche Engineering. I am working on the new Revere High School and helped design the stormwater management system, along with a big team of people, but specifically David Conway, my project manager, who is also a PE. This is the agenda we'll be going over today. It's quite a big presentation, so I just wanted to give you an idea of where we're headed. We are going to start by reviewing some of the project's existing conditions, and then we'll introduce you to the proposed design, the proposed conditions of the site, and then we're going to look at flooding and stormwater in two different pieces. So we'll first start with some of the day-to-day stormwater events, some of just the typical rainfalls and how we've designed a stormwater management system to capture and convey that runoff. Within that section, we'll talk about flow rates and volumes leaving the site, as well as our planned water quality treatment for that stormwater. And then the second half of the presentation, we will talk about the bigger storm events, extreme weather flooding, when the ocean's flowing over land, how our site, Revere High School, will fare, and how we've designed it to fare. Looking at the project's existing conditions, this is where we started. So the red line is the extent of the project. We've got the Eastern County Ditch running through the project. If you can follow my cursor, just right through the middle. The land use, the existing site, is heavily asphalt. It's a lot of impervious area, about 21 acres of existing impervious if you count up all of the building foundations and the pavement that's on site. There is existing landscaping as well. There's the interior of the old dog track, which is currently an isolated vegetated wetland, and then just some surrounding peripheral landscaping, about 12 acres. So in total, we're looking at 33.5 acres, with the majority of it being existing impervious pavement. So this is a pretty big project, and to help visually aid you, we have some existing and proposed side-by-sides throughout this presentation. On the left side of the screen, we have the existing site, which we were just talking about, and then on the right is your first look at the proposed site. So we've got a building up at elevation 19 with a subsurface parking garage. It's not really subsurface, it's open on the majority of sides to allow for stormwater floodwaters to move through and out of the project. We've also got 2 lower lying sports fields that act like floodplains with they're at elevation 3, so it helps just create positive flow toward the Eastern County Ditch to help mimic some of those existing conditions, and a tennis court, compensatory flood storage, a few other things. We started by analyzing the existing site by looking at the subcatchments and where the water is currently flowing to. So the majority of the site, stormwater hits the pavement and runs to the Eastern County Ditch or flows overland to the Eastern County Ditch. That would be DPA on this figure. The red arrow at the top of the screen leaving the project site towards Shawmut Street is representative of 2 30-inch box culverts that, or just regular culverts, that leave the project site and convey the stormwater below the neighborhood and toward Rumney Marsh, which is our eventual discharge location. In the existing condition, there's also an isolated vegetated wetland, which acts as its own subcatchment, so DPB, and that just collects localized runoff from the existing landscaping that's surrounding the old dock track. The first thing we did to analyze a site this large was do area takeoffs. So we got a feel for how much impervious is on site, how much pervious is on site, like we have just showed, and then we collected test pits. We need to better understand what type of soils were on site, where groundwater was at. We did 20 test pits that were collected by soil exploration in 12/22, so December 2022. From those results, we were able to deduct that due to the soils on site, granular fill, peat, organic silt, and clay, it was not a good candidate for infiltration. Also because the groundwater elevation was at elevation 2, around 2, and most of the site is at elevation 4. So within 2 feet of the surface, we were experiencing groundwater. Per code, we would need at least 2 feet of separation from any type of infiltration basin or bioretention. The bottom of that to groundwater. So that's how we started our stormwater design, was knowing that due to the existing soils on site, we would classify them as HSG-D soils with a very low infiltration rate of 0.17 inches per hour. There was just insufficient separation, and it was not a reliable use for stormwater management on this site. Here's our proposed design. So this gets a bit granular. This PDF here, or this image of the project site, is very in the weeds. We broke out all of the areas by different surface types to just understand how we were changing the site and how to properly account for that in our calculations. So you can see in the blue, we've got the new building. In the lighter blue, we have compensatory storage areas for some of our bigger flood events that we'll talk about a little bit later. We've got fields, we've got some of the parking areas in red. And all in all, our total proposed impervious is about 14.5 acres, and our proposed pervious is close to 19 acres. The way this stacks up, if you compare the two, if we compare the proposed design and the existing design, we have a significant increase in pervious area within the proposed design. Because there's so much pavement in the existing design, we are taking so much of that out. We're taking over 7 acres of impervious area out and turning that into vegetated areas. This is honestly the biggest part of our stormwater system, is recreating some of the existing conditions in like pre-existing. So the most resilient design we can make is to add grasses and add more vegetation to help either stormwater move slowly toward the Eastern County Ditch or to just mimic some of those undeveloped conditions. So you can see here our vegetated areas increased by nearly 1.5 acres. Our fields are about 5 acres in total, and those also can take in water very quickly and slow it down as it discharges it. So total, we have an increase in pervious areas by about 6.5 acres. Our proposed subcatchment. So if you recall with our existing subcatchments, we did have 2. We had DPA, which went to the Eastern County Ditch, and DPB, which flowed to the isolated vegetated wetland. But because we do not have an isolated vegetated wetland in this condition, everything is flowing to the Eastern County Ditch. So we're mimicking all of those same conditions and using those conditions to calculate our flow rates and our volumes to make sure that we are not sending any excess water to any surrounding properties. We're maintaining the 2 30-inch culverts at the end of the site, at the end of the Eastern County Ditch, and sending our stormwater overland or through new head walls along the Eastern County Ditch. This is a side-by-side comparison. Like I was talking about earlier, we do collapse the subcatchments into one. Everything is going to the Eastern County Ditch in this situation, but actually less water is going to the Eastern County Ditch at a much slower rate, which we will discuss next. Another side-by-side just to orient you to see how our existing conditions, largely pavement, turn into vegetated conditions in our proposed state. So for our proposed site analysis, we did a very similar process to the existing site analysis. We did area takeoffs for the entire project site, and then we looked at our local regulations to make sure that our stormwater management system was designed to reduce the proposed volume of stormwater leaving the site as well as slow it down. To do that, we look at different storm events. So we look at the 2-year, the 10-year, the 25, and the 100-year 24-hour storm events. Those each have a different type of rainfall associated with them. I believe the 100-year is about 7.5 inches. So modeling 7.5 inches of rainfall on our site. How is it leaving? At what volume is it leaving? And how quickly is it leaving? We also looked at some of our future 2070 storm events, as well as met some of our water quality goals through treatment. Those goals would be 80% TSS removal and 44% pre-treatment for that. This table shows our stormwater flow rates and volumes in the proposed design. So as I was saying, our proposed design had to mimic or reduce volumes and flow rates to the Eastern County Ditch. Most importantly, because our design, first and foremost, was to positively affect this property by greening it and also not negatively impacting our neighbors. We are not sending any excess stormwater to neighbors. We are not sending it off any quicker or sending any more volume. We are reducing the volume and we are reducing the speed of the water leaving the site. As you can see here, the total runoff leaving those 2 culverts at the end of the Eastern County Ditch. In the existing condition, our numbers are about 75, 124 cubic feet per second. But as you can see in the bright red flow rates in the proposed condition, they are all significantly lower than the existing condition. When we do the math, the proposed design decreases the flow rates by nearly 40%. Looking at it from a volumetric standpoint, these same idea but in volume. So we have 6 acre feet of runoff leaving the site in the proposed condition versus in the existing condition nearly 7, and that's about a 10% reduction in volume leaving the project site. These are also very conservative numbers because we did not take credit for any of the stormwater recycling that the project is proposing, which would be reusing some of the stormwater that hits the roof and irrigates the landscaping. We're not including that. So these are more conservative numbers for the proposed. If we were to include that, our proposed numbers would be even lower and would show an even lower reduction. Now for water quality treatment, we have a few different treatment trains across this site. It is a very big site and we had to get creative because a lot of it is very low lying and because we can't rely on infiltration to do our treatment that's necessary before discharging to the Eastern County Ditch. So what you see here, we have different watersheds broken up. In the table to the left, the colors correspond with some of the pictures on the right. So the red areas are either treated by deep sump and hooded catch basins that go to water quality structures, which are really just like filtration devices before discharging to the Eastern County Ditch. We have Filterra systems, which are proprietary filtration systems, really like a wetland in a box. So the soil medium within a concrete box that's lined. So none of these will rely on infiltration. These lined boxes will have a soil section that treats the stormwater before discharging. And we also have water quality swales that collect the water and then discharge to the outfall. Moving on, so we've been talking a lot about our day-to-day stormwater events, the typical 24-hour rainfall event, but this site is particularly creative in that we needed to learn how to model very, very large extreme weather storm events. This is a low-lying site in a flood zone, and we know that our stormwater design needs to keep people safe and needs to keep people dry. We know that the City of Revere Master Plan is looking to use the Revere High School as a safe haven for emergency storm events to keep people safe and to use it as a community center. So our design keeps people above the floodwater. To do that, to start that entire story, we needed to look at the existing floodplain on site. So when we have that big 100-year storm event, that extreme weather event, how far do the floodwaters extend into the existing conditions? So as you can see here, the limits of this, titled in a report, Bordering Land Subject to Flooding, we, Niche Engineering, compiled this study in March 2024 and determined the extent of what we understand to be the flooding on site. An ORAD was issued confirming this boundary in June 2024. We use this information to understand how much compensatory storage we needed to provide. So we know that in the existing condition, we needed to provide as much storage for floodwater in the existing or in the proposed condition as the existing condition. So this compensatory storage figure shows just that. To study compensatory storage, we looked at it from a per elevation strata. So from 0 to 1, how much storage is allowed in the existing condition. So if we look at this table to the left, which is a little small, I'll walk you through it. You see the range interval, which is the elevation, so 0 to 0.99, 0 to 1, 1 to 2, and then the existing storage. So if we look at 0 to 0.99, at the existing site, there is currently 30 cubic yards of storage between those elevations. In our proposed design, we are providing 53. So we are either meeting or exceeding. We are exceeding all of the different elevations, but this is how we made sure we were. The last column is the excess storage created, and I think this is the most important column, where you see at every elevation we are providing more space for floodwaters to stay on our site or to be on our site, which would displace floodwaters from neighbors and actually come and store on our site in very meaningful ways that will eventually drain to the Eastern County Ditch. In total, we are providing 4,100 cubic yards of additional storage created for these floodwaters. This is an exciting analysis of how we modeled the floodwaters within a regional context.
Just wanted to pause for a moment. Dave Conway from Niche Engineering.
Just so a quick clarification, because this has been a area of confusion, and even kind of noticed it with the previous applicant. The compensatory storage and the bordering land subject to flooding. So the last two slides you saw before this one. I'm going to put the storm in context. That's associated with an inland flooding. So if we were to get 8 inches of rain in 24 hours with no storm surge, that's when you would see that flooding up to the 4.55. So basically the exit of the Eastern County Ditch, those two 30-inch conduits, this is what the ORAD we did with you folks a while back, act as a restriction. The water would be held back on our site up to elevation 4.55. This next part is ocean flooding. So this is a hurricane, so the part I just described is no hurricane, no storm surge, 8 inches of rain in absence of any storm surge, and the water leaving the site can't, it's like the old Sumner Tunnel, it can't make it through in time, so it backs up on our site up to elevation 4.55. These animations you're going to see are associated with ocean flooding. Category 3 hurricane comes and overwhelms the tide gates and the tracks above them. So I don't want to mess that up, Claire, so I don't know if I can press.
I don't know how to get to. I don't know if I can get to the.
So if we're looking at the city of Revere, where does the floodwatering start? How does it reach our site? When does it reach our site? These are the questions we were asking, and this is how we look to solve it. So things to know as I play this video, which is an animation of floodwaters. As the surge elevations rise by foot, you can see the Revere Beach Boulevard acting as a seawall, almost keeping the ocean out. Romney Marsh is starting to fill and inundate, but it still hasn't reached our site yet because we've got operating tide gates. At elevation 9, however, the tide gates are overtopped. Floodwaters do reach our site, either overland or through underground box culverts, and we see massive flooding, this is the existing condition, so this is what would happen today in an extreme event. The arrows represent flow paths of water, and now what we're seeing after we've filled the site up, we're showing how floodwaters would recede in the same way. So at elevation 9, floodwaters are starting to clear up on site. They're moving overland, they're moving underground, and floodwaters continue to recede.
So it just pauses for about a minute, so I'm going to shift forward about 30 seconds, and it will resume with the proposed flood storage animation in just a few seconds, not minutes.
We modeled the same idea for the proposed conditions. So how we did this was we imported the surface that we had created that shows the elevation of the proposed design. We put it into the context of the existing Revere topography, and we looked at floodwaters and how they would move similarly to the existing conditions. So everything will look the same up until elevation 9 because those tide gates are still operating. They're still keeping water back in Rumney Marsh. We still have the seawall of Revere Beach Boulevard, keeping the ocean from reaching our site from the east. But as we hit 9, we see the same idea. We see the stormwater, the floodwaters, reach our site overland and underground. But most importantly, we see that the building, because it's at elevation 19, and I'm going to pause it here, because the building is at elevation 19 in the proposed design, that means we are still 6 feet above the nearest floodwaters. So we have clearance, people will be dry in the livable spaces. The building looks blue here because there's underground parking that allows the floodwaters to move in below the school and move back out through the fields and overland. This is really important. Our goal is to keep people safe and dry. So the building being up, a little hard to see here, but the building is accessible and dry. And most importantly, the roads are also up. So where we connect to VFW, we're also at a higher elevation to stay accessible during big flood events. Similarly to the existing, floodwaters are moving away from the site now. The flooding continues to recede. Our floodwater in the proposed design moves overland into the Eastern County Ditch and slowly back out the culverts all the way to Rumney Marsh.
So this does pause again for another minute before Chanel's closing statement with one more slide. So I'm just going to skip forward 30 seconds, and the next slide should begin momentarily. And as you can see, we are just rounding the bend to the end.
And to close, I'll bring us all back to our rendered site plan just to really emphasize how much greening we're doing to the site and how mindfully we've really put things together so they all work in tandem to support a stormwater design that allows for those smaller storm events to be collected and conveyed to the Eastern County Ditch, and also provides really meaningful flow paths for some of the bigger flooding events to flood into our site, to flood meaningfully around our site in ways that was intentionally designed, and then to recede in similar ways, to really keep our critical infrastructure safe, critical infrastructure being utilities, keeping our children safe and above board, and allowing for this school to operate in the ways that the city of Revere intended, which is to create a dry, safe space that's above floodwaters, even in some of the 2070 projected stormfall events. So thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please reach out to David Conway or myself at Niche Engineering. Thank you. Bye.
All right. So with that, luckily, Chanel and David Conway are both here from Niche Engineering. So with that, I appreciate the commission and members of the audience taking in that presentation. I'm ready to pass it to the commission to sort of discuss and ask any questions that you have.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. So you have all this green space, and water hits the site from a rain event, and it hasn't made it into the stormwater management system, stored on the site. Where does the water move? Does it move to the Eastern County Ditch, And how fast, where does the surface water move and how fast does it move to the ditch? That's something I'm curious to know, because you have 2 feet of space. It's a lot of compensatory storage considering how much acreage you have. But I'd be curious, where is it gonna move and how fast is it gonna move?
Want to take that?
Is that just gonna flow right back into the ditch, or?
So in a standard storm event, a couple inches of rain, the site will act just like any other site. The water will move across the site. The exact times the concentration is probably, because we're decreasing the rate so much, we've probably moved, I can pull the exact number out, but the existing time of concentration is probably in the order of 25 minutes. That means it takes a drop of water 25 minutes to get from the farthest the farthest point to the Eastern County ditch. We probably double that. So we slow it down, but it doesn't really stay in any way stored on the site. It moves through the site just at a much slower rate. And there's less of it because there's more pervious area.
Okay. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if I could refer you back to one of the slides that we were shown, when it showed compensatory storage. According to this chart, if I'm reading it right, the compensatory storage is increased where the building is?
Yes.
And how is that possible if there's a building in a place where there was a dog track with ground that was meant to leash the water through so that they wouldn't be running in a mud puddle?
So where the building will be, it's a podium-style building with empty space under it. So the green you see on the right is the space below the first occupied floor. It's the garage. That area is a little bit higher on the site. It'll be excavated out, the foundation built, the slab created, columns, and then the occupied building above that space. We actually have, for clarity, is this the?
It's the site sections that you're looking for?
Yeah, they're towards the end.
I think they're towards the end.
We added them to the.
So with our BLSF being elevation 4.55 and the garage being elevation 4, we still have about a half a foot of floodwaters that can move through the building below the BLSF elevation. That's why you're seeing storage, because the slab is lower than the flood elevation itself. So this section here gives you somewhat of an idea of how the parking garage at grade with open, can you see my cursor? No, you cannot. So
Yeah, the hatch part is the occupied part of the building with I think those are little cars in there.
Yep, the little cars at the bottom are at elevation 4. Our BLSF elevation is elevation 4.55. So we still have that half foot of storage of floodwaters. That's why it's showing as compensatory storage, because it is providing volume available for floodwaters to move in up to that elevation.
And again, just in context, the 4.55 flood elevation that we keep referring to in the compensatory storage is associated with a storm that is 8 inches of rain in 24 hours that doesn't provide a storm surge. So I won't qualify the event, but I would think be somewhat unique.
How do you plan on keeping underneath the parking area dry? If the groundwater is in between 2 and 4 typically, how do you plan on no groundwater getting?
So the foundation will be waterproofed, right?
Yes.
Because it is a garage, there'll be, it's a big area, right? There'll be area drains in it. Now remember, it's covered, so you're not getting rain on it. The only water that, outside of a flood event, the only water that this garage will see will be snow melt or something, maybe wind-blown rain around the edges or something like that. But there will be area drains. Building code, those area drains need to go through oil gas separators and into the sanitary system. So on a day-to-day basis, it will work like any other podium-style building with the area drains, and you design it so you're not picking up excess water or rain to burden the sewer system.
Mr. Chairman, So if in this parking garage, let's say it gets flooded, is there any emergency plan to do that? I mean, to evacuate?
Yeah.
Do you consider something like that?
Yes, it's a great question. So one of the consultants on the project that's not here is doing a flood mitigation survey for the project. They'll stay on board throughout construction to ensure that through the public bidding process, all these design elements remain intact. And they will be writing a flood-specific and storm-specific operations manual for the city, for the school district. So any forecasted events that might trigger flooding to the degree that you see it getting here, or any forecasted events, like David mentioned, an 8-inch rainstorm in a short amount of time, there'll be an operations manual of what does that mean? Does that mean that the school can function? Does that mean nobody can park under it? Does that mean there's no classes that day, et cetera? So there'll also be a evacuation plan for vehicles, et cetera. But generally speaking, we have a company that's going to be providing a pretty comprehensive, every scenario that we and you can think of, there'll be a written plan for that's shared with first responders, police, school, city, maintenance folks, et cetera.
Good.
Can we bring up something that I mentioned that on the Zoom meeting about the functioning of that Eastern County ditch past the perimeter of the building? You recall I was concerned that all of this is depending upon that, a lot of it is depending upon that Eastern County ditch functioning, not in a 100-year flood, but on a normal or an excessive rain area, and whether or not, as a city building, and the city is responsible for this, whether or not there be a contingency plan to keep access to that Eastern County ditch all the way to the end of the Rumney Marsh, so we know that it's functioning and will do the job that it's supposed to do.
Yes, Joe, thank you for pointing that out, because I recall you mentioned that to me, and that you brought it up even at the previous meeting, and I misunderstood what you were asking at the meeting. And I think that's something that the contingency plan that Brian was just explaining, that a consultant is preparing for the school itself, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but they are also going to be looking at the Eastern County ditch itself all the way downstream and providing recommendations to the city for future maintenance. While it will be somewhat separated from the school maintenance itself, they're going to be providing that in order to protect the school and surrounding areas. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would add that, you know, by virtue of this being a large project with the school building committee, we're lucky to have some of the city engineers that have been working with us for years. I know Chris is one, he's here, Chris Chermella. And between Chris and Nick Rystrom, they know a whole lot about how this discharges out to that floodgate, and we'll be supplementing their understanding of that and their maintenance of that with a plan dedicated to the high school that more or less recommends, you know, intervals at which those culverts should be checked out, scoped, jetted out, and seasonal year-by-year maintenance out to the flow path all the way up to that Oak Island tide gate.
So I have a question about the construction of the foundation and the waterproofing of it. In the process of having to dig for this foundation, you're going to have to dig a certain elevation down, and you're going to, because of the high water table, you're going to have to dewater the site, or dewater the area, the immediate area. Because of the high water table in the area, where is that water going to go? It clearly can't go in someone's backyard on Dunn Road, but because of that high water table, where are you going to dewater? Are you going to bring in fracking tanks? Are you going to build a giant pit that pretty much encapsulates the entirety of the site? How are you going to handle that dewatering of the site to build the actual building?
Not exactly my area of expertise, and
whose is that? There's a whole host of yous.
Yeah.
Someone stand up,
Unfortunately,
please, and answer that question.
We
please.
don't have Consigli, the contractor, with us. I apologize for that. But we are, right now, we are assuming there both will be smaller temp retention basins and also systems to capture, clean, and release the water at good rates. So what we've carried in the budget, we haven't bid it out, we don't have a site worker yet, we don't know exactly how they're gonna approach it, is that we have funds to both treat and discharge water, but as this gets phased and built in pieces, there will be temp basins that move their way around the site based on what phase we're in and what work we're doing. But still the golden rule of, none of it goes over the property line. Will absolutely be enforced. So I think the actual means and methods of doing that, Consigli could give a better answer than me, but I know part of their answer would be, we need to get a site work bidder on board and work it out with them. I can assure the commission we're carrying the funds to treat anything, capture anything, and not exceed any rates and not let any of it go over the property line.
Yeah, no, and then the reason I asked that is because in your stormwater management plan, the part of that construction is a part of this. And it just says that you're gonna dig a pit. And with a very high water table, I'm just kind of working out the logistics. It doesn't take an engineer to realize that you're not gonna have a lot of place to put the water, essentially.
So the dewatering is subject to a separate NIPDES permit for the dewatering activities.
Yep.
As a special condition, and again, Brian has mentioned for the site contractor to be named in the future, they're gonna come up with the means and methods for that. As a special condition, as part of the approval, we could provide that dewatering plan to the commission.
Yep.
Again, it's a large, very professional operation. We're not gonna just hose it out into North Shore Road.
I wouldn't expect anything less, no. But moreover than that, I want to make sure that this is not, you don't have a plan for that in place right now. You don't have a contractor that is going to provide you a plan for that. And that is a huge thing to actually get this foundation built. So I'd be curious, I need that information. I want to know exactly how it's going to get phased, staged, all of it. That would be something I need to know.
Yeah, and that's not, through the chair, apologies, but I think that's something that the team is willing to have as a special condition, that we provide it to the commission, and we could even make it 30 days or even further prior to construction. We could talk about what it looks like with the schedule. The development of that plan would require the contractor to be on board. A contractor to be on board requires a permit. It's sort of this catch-22 scenario where that's where, in my opinion, I think a special condition requesting that the team gives it to the commission for review with ample time prior to it being implemented may be a fair resolution if you think you're open to it.
Not really sure about that yet. I kind of want to discuss a little bit with my fellow commissioners, but any other questions from commissioners? No?
Mr. Chairman, I have another question. I know there are tide gates on northern part of the area. Do you know, or do you have any knowledge about the conditions of those gates? Or because they are also a big part of the flooding area there.
So I have those gates were rebuilt in 2010. I don't have it on this side. All right, so that's the location of them. They were rebuilt in 2010. I have the plans with the key elevations on it. That's why some of what we quoted to you. I don't know today their condition, but they were rebuilt completely by the plans were by Weston and Sampson. The gates operate up to elevation 8.25. The tracks above them are at elevation 8.96. Oh, thank you. And that's where I think I jumped up in the middle and gave you some other numbers where the highest recorded tide surge at those gates at that time in 2010 was 9.6 feet. So it sounds like they went over the tracks at probably Hurricane Bob or Hurricane Edna or something like that.
And I know these gates are not under the Wetlands Protection Act. The Army Corps actually does this. This is under their purview. But it 100% impacts our site. The functionality of those gates, I know it's not our jurisdiction, but it definitely impacts our site. And I would definitely want to make sure that whomever is going to be providing that certification, I would like to see that to make sure that we're not going to have an adverse impact or that these gates are going to function. So if you could speak to that, Chris, I'd appreciate that.
Of course. So these gates are obviously continuously rehabbed. They were installed, I think it was 2013, that the one that, for the Eastern County ditch that affects the site is, so we rehabbed this gate in 2 years ago, and we just changed out the actuator this year, as long as the bearings for the shaft that goes up and down for this gate. It's set to elevation 1.2, which is about 16 inches from the top of the asphalt at Ellerton in Argyle, that lower neighborhood on the other side of the tracks, which would be drastically affected. Probably about 50 to 60 homes would be underwater if this gate did malfunction. So,
Right. The entire site would be underwater if that was the case as well. But moreover than that, having that certification and mechanical things fail. You know what I mean? Having a sign off from the Army Corps about this is not going to adversely impact this site would be a great piece of data to have. Not required under our purview, but it would be something I think that would ease a lot of the tension about that. But
so we have an O&M manual that I can provide to you guys associated with this gate. That's part of the permit that was issued with the gate. If you'd like to see our maintenance logs and everything else associated, if that might be helpful.
no, absolutely. Operation and maintenance is definitely key for anything to function. But as you very well know, mechanical things fail all the time for no reason. So, not to play devil's advocate with you, I really respect what you do and what's happening with that, but that is definitely something I'm concerned about. But, the last piece of, and everything with the floodgates I'm fine with, so I don't have any other questions about that.
Okay.
But thank you, Chris. Yep. The last is, the biggest piece of the puzzle is the FEIR. And the fact that it's not going to be issued until the earliest, the 29th. And that's a piece of this puzzle that I would really like to have before we can make a determination about this project, because all of the people that are involved, all the regulatory agencies that are involved with this, they have pretty much the final say. I know that a MEPA review is not a yes or no, but it is a good sounding board to make a decision on with this. And the EIR, I know, is not going to change that much, but having that certificate would make a big difference in my eyes. And I don't know how other commissioners feel about this, but this is something, the complexity of this project, and considering what the project is. I know we really shouldn't be considering the type of project it is, but we have to in some cases. But the fact is that we don't have this certification just yet. And I think that it would be prudent for us to continue this till September, this meeting, or this hearing, excuse me. I'd be curious some thoughts about that from the other commissioners before anybody else speaks, please. Anything? Nothing?
It would be nice to have. I have a different comment about compensatory storage, so I'll wait.
No, that's okay. I'm sure you're queued up to to say something, Brian.
I guess, going back to what I mentioned last month, we have aligned the documentation, the permitting, and the procurement of this project to be able to move from phase one, which is already approved, into phase two next month. In the event that we were to continue this until next month, it's totally within your purview. I understand your points, your questions. There probably is impact to the high school schedule. So I would even be interested in, I'd ask the committee, when do we think, after the MEPA FEIR is issued, when do we think we could be back for a hearing? I'd also just sort of comment that while we're hearing questions, I'm not sure what the FEIR is going to change. The initial two MEPA Submissions are comprehensive, they're available to everybody. The review went pretty well, and being that it will expose the project to some unknown degree of just having to flow with the schedule, having to potentially hold off awarding site work, hold off moving into the critical path of the schedule of getting the foundations dug, getting the steel ordered, getting the steel here. I'd ask for consideration from the committee that unless there's very specific items that you'd like to see in there that we could try to get into, I just sort of like to do whatever I can to be able to keep this project on schedule and be able to hit the ground building in September.
So I would be willing to call for a special meeting. As soon as the FEIR comes in, we can have a special meeting if we have any last questions or topics that we need to bring up. But once the FEIR is going to come in on the 29th, in 5 days after that is the September meeting. We would need time to review to make sure that there are no extraneous comments or demands or changes to the project that would alter the construction or the design of the project that considerably impactful. I don't think that's going to happen, but truthfully, I think that this is something that we should have this FEIR in hand so that there is no question that this is all above board. There's no question that what we are doing is not going to adversely impact the environment, and how we're doing it is going to be a streamlined process from there. But I would be willing to have a special call for a special meeting to expedite this so that we can get it done. But considering the fact that the next meeting is only 5 days from when it gets issued, I don't think that we're impacting the schedule. 4 days is not going to really impact the schedule that much, in my humble opinion. But
I understand.
I can appreciate where you're coming from with that. But if other commissioners would be open to, as well as Left Field and other engineering folks, that to continue this until September.
Yeah, so the FEIR touched on one of the biggest issues I have, which is the compensatory storage. I didn't feel comfortable having the compensatory storage be underneath the high school, which gave me a response about we couldn't do underground storage because of hydraulic connectivity. Can you bring up actually the plan again?
Floor, site plan?
Site plan.
Site plan, please. So,
Do you want the compensatory storage, or you want the actual site plan?
it's the actual site plan.
Okay, let's get there.
Run.
I'll do the big one. Let me go to the rendering.
Yeah, there's one at the end. So,
Yeah, there's a
but
big one at the
my
end.
initial request
there you go.
was, can it be somewhere else? I don't feel comfortable with 4 feet of storm surge underneath the high school that children could be in. I mean, emergencies happen all the time. These things unexpectedly happen. You guys said we can't do underground storage because of the hydraulic connectivity. The hydraulic connectivity defined by the Mass DEP is the waterway ensures that flood flows will pass freely in an equivalent manner post-construction. I don't consider the compensatory storage under the high school the same manner of free-flowing water as it was before the construction. Your entire northeast elevation is a loading dock. There's only really one small area where that compensatory storage can escape the parking lot and make it back to the Eastern County ditch.
Do you mind if I change the slide?
Absolutely.
Okay, sure. There are two, I think the hydraulic connectivity is part of it, but also compensatory storage, the volume required to store. So underground storage for the sheer volume of compensatory storage that we would need to provide on the site also makes it a non-starter. However, I will go to this slide. Actually, I'm gonna scoot to there's a blown up version of this. Okay, so as you can see, if we're looking at the building, we have a few different ways for stormwater to leave because, as you point out, like flowing from one end of the building is not true. Meaningful storage and the existing condition, stormwater could move throughout. So this edge of the building is open here. And then we also have a large box, we're calling it a stormwater bridge. It's about 25 feet wide. 25 feet wide that provides connection between this wing of the building so water can continue to flow overland downstream over the field. So this is why in the video I was calling it more of a floodplain because it's lower, it's at elevation 3. So the stormwater does have movement that it could keep moving overland in a few different ways.
So you mentioned it's open, but,
It's open, yeah.
but
So it runs
everything to
underneath.
the north is
This is all.
loading dock, your transformers,
Yeah.
you're at elevation 6.
Yes, so we concentrated
And
where
7.
where we slope up to get to that loading dock. It's
Mhm.
just this sliver here. All of this, where my cursor is open, elevation 4, and then it flows to the Eastern County Ditch from there. So all of this is open to grade. Oh, sorry, this is hard.
Understood where
Yeah.
it's open to grade, but still based on the definition of hydraulic connectivity by the Mass DEP.
Mhm.
Everything's hydraulically connected to the Eastern County Ditch right now, is it not?
Yes, it is.
So it's not the same free-flowing as it was, as it stands today, based on this.
Yes, and then the other perspective would be if we were to box culvert or pipe it in a way that is closed
You
drainage.
can't, you told me you
Right.
can't, and I believe you,
Yeah.
but I still don't believe that there's not other ways to get the compensatory storage done on the project site.
So
More retention ponds. What are you doing with the area next to Dunn Road?
some of that area is being used for compensatory storage at the lower elevations. It will also be available at the higher elevations.
I'm gonna get to the main one. Comp storage.
So this is why we're talking about the FEIR, because they brought up this exact storm surge flowage issue that we flagged at the first meeting. This is, and I still don't see the answer.
So
I don't believe in the hydraulic connectivity, and I don't believe in flooding a school,
So
underneath the school, sorry.
I just want to point out in the expanded ENF single or draft EIR of the MIPA documents, we never received any comments with concern with the bordering land subject to flooding compensatory storage regulatory compliance. Any discussion to the floodplain analysis was with respect to the storm surge, which is a different storm event and a different flood pattern than the bordering land subject to flooding. So where I understand where your concerns are coming from and where you're trying to sort of like parse the difference between the two, but what we're looking at here is not sort of that overarching storm surge. What we're talking about is elevations up to 4.55 that need to be compensated with this compensatory flood storage to make up for that inland bordering land subject to flooding. This is an inland flooding event, not that coastal surge that has been continuing to be brought up through the FEIR. So with respect to the compliance of this, there have been no concerns brought to our attention through that process. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Ann Martin from LEC Environmental. I'm a colleague of Claire's. I just wanted to clarify for you the MIPA process and what the FEIR certificate is. Not necessary for...
I'm very well aware of what it is. I don't need a MIPA class, but how does it pertain to what we're talking about here? We're familiar with the MIPA process. How does it pertain, and how can we preclude it if we're...
So the MIPA process is a state process to allow applicants to receive comments from state agencies in relationship to state permits that may or will be required, so that you get feedback from state agencies for that state permitting process. As you know, the FEIR certificate is a certificate. It is not a permit. What it does is it says to state agencies, the issues have been discussed enough that you may now proceed forward with the state permitting, and that there's enough information available to the applicant for that state permitting and any open issues to be worked out between the state agency and the applicant. I'm not saying that the information in the FEIR does not shed light for this commission. What I am saying is you don't have to wait for that process to be completed. And a lot of the information that we've submitted to you today is the exact same information that was in the FEIR. The only thing that wasn't in there was the animation, because we realized the animation would make it proceed clearer.
Anything else from commissioners?
So, I mean, if the FEIR wouldn't explicitly state that the compensatory storage and the hydraulic connectivity is appropriate, then I'm not comfortable passing this, so I defer to the DEP.
All I can tell you is what my experience is, right? So I can't speak for an agency, but they don't normally say that. The certificate either says you've adequately addressed the issues to a level that you can proceed forward with state.
But those are the issues they brought up.
Right, but
So
it's,
if you're satisfying those issues for them, which are our same issues, then we are satisfied.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just saying, it's not really gonna come out and say, you did a great job. It's gonna say.
I don't need them to say the hydraulic connectivity is unimpeded and this design works really well and everything's great. If they give you the permit, after bringing up those specific comments and the flood flowing and the hydraulic connectivity and everything we're asking about now, if they issue you the certificate, I'm comfortable issuing the NOI.
And that's exactly what I'm saying right now. If they issue the certificate, then I am comfortable. And I would ask other commissioners to wait. We have 5 days to wait after they review it, and that doesn't give us much time to make sure that we have reviewed this certificate properly. I know this is the FEIR is not a yes or no. I really don't appreciate having a MEPA class up here. What I'm concerned about is that we have all our ducks in a row with everything. And that's what it is. And speaking with DEP analysts from Nero and asking them about this situation, being advised that you don't want to put the cart before the horse is what I'm getting at here. And I'm asking for 5 days. I'm not asking for 6 months or a year. I'm asking for 5 days.
Sure. No, don't have an objection from that. And this is my job to ask. I think I understand what the exception is going to be. Would there be any consideration through the chair of that being a special condition of the permit, of MEPA coming back silent on the issue we were just talking about with an approval on the 28th? If the MEPA certificate comes back, should we not expect an imminent approval next month? So therefore, could it be considered a special condition?
I'd rather not make a special condition because an order of conditions set by a notice of intent is still subject to the MEPA process. If I do something and I put something on an order of conditions that is going to adversely impact this project because we didn't have a certificate saying that, then how am I supposed to do that? How am I supposed to proceed from there when we've already got egg all over our face? Because we've made a misstep because we didn't have generally everything. I know we have almost everything, but I don't think we have everything just yet to make a proper decision. And I understand how schedules and timetables and the price of things go up as the time increases. The project price is going to get higher and higher the longer we wait to proceed. I get that. I'm not trying to say that I don't get that. I've done many projects. But a project as big or as large of a scale as this is, and where it is, the type of project it is, and what it is influenced by, tidally, it's influenced by high groundwater, it's influenced by a lot of different things. So I just want to make sure that we're correct on this. I don't want to budge on this because there's no reason to. 5 days.
Mr. Chair, could I speak for one moment?
Absolutely.
Not with the intent to give a lesson on MEPA, but as somebody who has been regulated into oblivion by MEPA on a series of city projects that Elle is quite aware of as well. The one thing I would say here, Tom Skarsky, Chief of Planning Community Development, sorry. One of the carts is going to have to be placed before one of the horses. in the analogy, you could make the cart be MIPA, you could have the cart be the actions taken by the Conservation Commission, but this project cannot proceed without both of those. So if you were to issue an order of conditions for this project tonight and then it didn't receive its MIPA certificate, it's a moot point. The project cannot continue. And by the same token, you could say the same thing if the state certificate was issued, but the Conservation Commission failed to act. You need both of them, and I would just ask for you all to consider if that phasing, as you've laid it out, is really that critical, because we do have an entire team here that we're paying consultants and experts working on this project, that time is money, and also there is a check and balance throughout this process because of that rigorous MIPA review, which will happen and must happen irrespective of the actions the commission takes tonight. And I would just encourage you to look within the purview of the Wetlands Protections Act. And I think everything that they presented tonight shows that this work is well meeting the standards of that act. And I think actually there's other presentations tonight that were we to have seen the level of flooding we saw in that modeling would be underwater. This building would be above ground. And thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate it, Tom. Thank you. I don't know. I'm just compelled to want to continue this until September. It's just, this is my professional career. I do these things for a living, and compromising my moral integrity and my professional integrity is not something that I'm willing to do at this point. So I would like to continue this, and I would like to get some input from some other commissioners before you speak, Brian. Thank you.
I've never experienced this. How long does a appeal to the DEP take if we were to vote no and you had to appeal to the DEP?
Probably a year and a half, maybe the earliest 6 months, maybe. I've
never experienced it. I'm asking the wetland scientists here, or Claire. Or
Minimum 6 months.
Yeah, it's minimum 6 months. I've seen year and a half, 3 years for it to go. And I don't want to vote a no and delay this any further.
Just my curiosity, if it would have been faster, then we could have done that.
Yeah, no, it's at least 6 months. And I would definitely, as someone who went to that high school in the 90s, it wasn't good then. And I know we need a new high school, okay? And I'm not placate to all of you right now. I know this project needs to happen, okay? And I want to make sure that where it is located, and as you saw from the presentation tonight, from 195 VFW or American Legion Highway, they're raising the site. They're putting in compensatory water storage. However they do it, it's not perfect. Nothing in this world is, but not too far away from your site. And I just want to make sure that we are doing the right thing here. We have an obligation to do the right thing here. That's it. That's what I have to say about that.
If you will, just one.
Absolutely.
One more. If we were to continue the hearing, one other request through the chair would be to start working on or issue a draft order of conditions. That is something that would help us keep a bidding process moving with bidders understanding there's going to be a final order of conditions and we're going to abide by it, but a draft order of conditions would certainly be one of the things that would help us just keep parts of the train moving.
I already have at least 3 points, plus our standard boiler point.
Yep.
And I would ask other commissioners if they have order of conditions to please, in the next week, you have 7 days to provide any extraneous or special conditions to me. I'm going on record saying that, and I will have that to you in 8 days, a draft order of conditions, so that you can proceed as planned.
We appreciate that.
Or try to proceed, get your RFQs and RFPs out there to get your process or keep your process rolling.
Yep.
And as I stated earlier, I would be willing to have a special meeting, call for a special meeting to get this approved a little bit faster, not make you wait the 5 days. Okay?
Appreciate all that.
No, I'm trying to work with you here.
Yep.
I really
Understood.
am.
Yep. And I don't want to seem like I'm coming across in these requests as, in the back of my mind is a journal article that I read a week or two ago that, with all due respect to the folks who wrote it, I think there was some wording in there that I disagreed with. I'm not going to stand up here and say that doing that is going to delay the project. I just want you to hear that from me.
And I appreciate you saying that.
It means we have to get a few of our ducks back in a row and have them marching in the right order here. But it's something that I think we can make work. It's not fatal. Something like 6 months or a year would be I'd be telling you right now, we're moving the move-in date from fall 2028. So I appreciate the consideration. Anything we could do to move, if maybe it's a special meeting, I appreciate that offer. If we can work on the draft order conditions, I appreciate that. Just anything we can do to resequence some of the other parts that have nothing to do with you folks would allow me to tell you, City Council, School Building Committee, Mayor, just give us a little bit of time. This isn't the end of the rainbow. We're not ripping up our schedule and throwing it away.
No.
We're just trying to make the best of it. So I just wanted the message to be clear that I don't want to sound like I'm up here threatening that if this goes to a meeting later in the month or early next month, that the whole house of cards falls. That's not the case.
No, and I'm sure it won't. And truthfully, there's ways to shave off time here and there. And I'm sure you're going to be able to shave off that month that you already needed to shave off. So
my job is to bother everybody. So
that's
yes.
exactly right. The squeaky wheel gets the oil.
Yep.
So that being said, I think we're kind of all in agreement that we're going to continue this until the MIPA comes back. Potentially have an earlier scheduled meeting for later this month, later in August, when we do get it back. But I think that we've all come to a consensus about that. Your mic is not on, John.
John Shu, 221 Rice. Just make sure we get Brian on record that he agrees to a continuance.
Okay, Brian, if you wouldn't mind getting up and agreeing to that, that would be fantastic. If that is our plan.
I just wanted to ask, in addition to receiving the MIPA certificate and having a chance to review that, is there anything else from commission members that we can take away from tonight that we should be prepared for and prepared to address? Is that really the only piece that the project team needs to provide to the commission?
If the compensatory storage stays underneath the high school, I will not feel comfortable, but if you get the certificate, I will vote to issue.
And I might add that as an order of condition, I intend to have something to do with that Eastern County ditch as far as maintenance is concerned, whether it be from this plan itself or from the city of Revere.
And a preview into some of the order of conditions that I would set, that there would be 0 additional impervious surfaces added to that property in perpetuity. 0. That's something I don't, if everything you have here is correct and that we only have a certain amount available to us for compensatory water storage being used by greening the space, I do not want to see that as one order of conditions that I will put, that there will be no more impervious surfaces in perpetuity on this property.
And just to be clear, I think that's not something it's appropriate for me to comment on because our activity is just this project. I would encourage the committee to speak with the city and City Hall just because we've heard a lot of ideas of potentially doing something else down the line, including a commuter rail stop. So, again, nothing to do with us. That's not, we can abide by that, no problem. But
it's definitely not to put the kibosh on anything future in the site. It's basically, I'm trying to make sure that we have enough down the road longevity of this project to be able to hold that water on the site with all the green spaces that we have added, so that the site has longevity for 50 years, not 15 years, because we put a commuter rail on that property. That's kind of where I'm going with this. I want to make sure that this site has longevity by not adding additional impervious surfaces, excuse me. You know what I mean?
Chair, do you mind if I ask a quick
Absolutely,
question?
go ahead.
I just kind of want to ask a kind of a summation question of everything that's been talked about over the last couple minutes. As far as from a timeline perspective, So our meeting is September 3rd?
3rd.
Okay, and you're hopefully going to be able to have all your documentation of everything that the commission needs by, what, August 29th?
Potentially the Monday following, is it gonna arrive that day, or is it gonna arrive?
Typically, a certificate is issued on a specific date. In this case, it would be August 29th, and we usually receive it the following business day, so we would be expecting to receive it September 1st, a Monday.
But that's Labor Day.
Okay.
So we would expect it the 2nd.
Okay, so then I would ask to the chair, if this is received by us on the 2nd,
So we have 24 hours to review the document, make sure that we're comfortable.
how
and-
long is this document typically?
So the how long was your EIR?
Oh, it's 546 pages?
It
No,
was-
I have
no,
that
it's
down.
not 546 pages. Just to prepare you. It's, I don't know, 25, 30 pages, but
Yes.
there is a whole lot, there's probably 10 pages at the beginning that restates everything that was in the FEIR. A lot of it is the same information that was restated in prior ones, so it's not a whole lot of new information.
Okay,
But it
so-
is,
So we'd be emailed this on the 2nd, I assume, and then just confirming that, correct?
I
wouldn't
will
be issued on
ask,
the- it wouldn't
there's
be
a
issued-
gentleman at MIPA that is, the issue with it being technically issued on the 29th is it has to be signed. So usually it gets signed and sometimes it doesn't get emailed around. I will plead with the gentleman who issues those and say, if it gets signed before 5 o'clock, can you please send it to me? And if he does, we'll send it to you over the weekend or as soon as we get it, if we can get it earlier. Just realistically, we wanted to be honest with you that sometimes there's a delay.
One other thing, before you get the certificate, you're often getting comments from the various permitting agencies, and it sounds like DEP is the one in particular that we have questions about. And if were we to receive those comments earlier, I would imagine the project team could send those along, which are probably most relevant and within the purview of what you'd be discussing and voting on.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So just confirming again, just for all of us watching, whether it's on TV or whatever. So September 2nd, we're expecting to be able to get this. If this is approved, which we're all assuming, hopefully it will be, that comes to us, then we have technically about 24 hours to do that for that meeting, if that's if we decide that we want to vote on it at that point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs is going to be in that Friday. So, anyways, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's basically what it boils down to. It's not a very long or intensive document. It's just reaffirming and restating what has already been submitted to us and confirming that it is not going to have an adverse, or hopefully it doesn't have an adverse impact to the environment. So that, yes.
So you would feel comfortable moving forward with this project with that within 24 hours of having that signed, being all set?
It wouldn't take me long to read 25 pages.
Okay, all right, just wanted to confirm for myself.
But I think, like I said earlier, considering the scope, its magnitude, and all the eyes on this project, it behooves us to have that. And if, Brian, if you could go on record stating that would be something that you would be able to continue, that would be great.
Continue to September 3rd, just to make sure I'm staring at my calendar as I do this, just so I don't forget. Yes, that's acceptable to us.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So if that's okay.
John Shu again. It is an open hearing. We haven't asked members of the public to speak yet. I don't know that there are any, but.
I would definitely give that. I just wanted to make sure everything was here to make sure that it was.
And just for members of the commission, September 3rd, your meeting, assuming you approve it, we could get the permit issued on the 4th. And just so everyone knows, there's a 10 business day hold on that before it's valid. So it wouldn't be valid until the middle of the month. That's mainly for you, so you know.
But it'll still give them a good roadmap and the ability to,
and
get vendors under their belt.
So we'll send out a draft set of the special conditions It's a Word document. Send it to the whole Conservation Commission. You guys can mark it up and add conditions that you think need to be in there.
Yep.
And then we can give that to them. So
Absolutely.
the rest of the order is just boilerplate stuff, so.
You committed to September 3rd, and I'm committing to 8 days after this meeting to make sure I'm a man of my word. But thank you very much. And so moving on with the agenda, we'll see you guys next month. Thank you. We had some site visits. Well, it's still open, and we're going to have a meeting in September 3rd, or on September 3rd for this. I mean, okay. No, that's fine. All right, so at this time, I'd like to open for any proponents or opponents of the project as it stands. Yep. Nope, so we're good. So we're continuing. Moving on. So site visits. So we had the certificate of compliance visit from Tom. Thank you very much for scheduling that and taking care of that. We have definitely streamlined and moved our, which I will refine with you, Elle, as we get a little bit closer to next month. I'd love to have a conversation and make sure that we get that off the agenda, but if nobody has any open discussion or items for open discussion, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.